All right, guys, welcome back. I know it's been a while that I've recorded a podcast. Life's been really busy with new kid, new house, moving. And then in my new house, I don't really have a podcast studio. So until I build a studio, it is all going to be audio only for future episodes. So I want to sincerely say sorry to you guys who want to watch, but we'll have the audio only, and it's as good as watching me talk, right? And then another thing that I kind of want to announce is I'm going to do some revamp on the branding of the podcast. Probably going to change the name, logo, but the content is going to be in the same. You guys don't have to do anything. You guys don't have to resubscribe or anything like that. I'll try to make it as seamless as possible, where if you are subscribed or if you know where to go get my podcast, it'll be at the same exact spot waiting for you. All right, I think that's for the announcement. Trying to think if there is anything else. I think that's all. All right. Lots been happening, since the Trump took presidency on January 20. I mean, there's so much stuff to talk about. I don't even know where to begin because everything is crazy. I bet this is what we were missing in the last 4 years, because Trump is really good about this. He wants to be on the media all the time, right? He wants the coverage on him. And the way he does that is he just spews a lot of things, anything, whatever's in mind. And I bet that's why a lot of folks that support him like about him, that he speaks his mind. And I think this was the common rhetoric back in 2018 when people voted for him. He's not like a typical politician where they have a script and they're following the script, they don't go beyond their script, but he doesn't give a care, he doesn't give a fuck, he just spews sense, nonsense, anything, whatever. And I feel like he deliberately does that, so there's so much noise, like he's like, oh, we're gonna end birthright citizenship, we're gonna do this to trans, we're gonna dismantle FEMA, we're gonna dismantle something, and then it makes the news cycle spinning around each headline. And by the time they're talking about one thing, there's already another thing to report. So I don't know if he's like genuinely thinking it works. Like what I'm trying to say is if he's aware that it works, or that's just him he's doing, but hey, it's working, right? He's able to get the media attention pretty much throughout the day, throughout the news cycle, day in, day night, 24/7. So yeah, it's been pretty crazy and chaotic. It's only, I'm recording this on January 25, and probably is gonna get published right away. But that's just nuts, all right, so let's start with the inauguration, right? Some of my thoughts. One thing that was interesting in this inauguration was how all the billionaires were seated on the front row, and his cabinet members that are going to help him to work were seated on the back. Now, I mean, it's his inauguration. He can put whoever he wants, but I feel like that's kind of sends a little bit of a signal that Maybe he's people who help him out, people who give him donation or are loyal to him, get to sit on the front and the others on the back. I don't know. That's just kind of bizarre that I would think people who are there to help him would be, or who are there to help him run the government, so his all the secretaries would be on the front seat, but whatever. And I think this is one of his CEO mentality, where he's putting investors or people who give you money to run the business first and not his management. I can see that kind of point of view. That's how he views. So of course investors are the people who give you money to run the business, right, or whatever, would be on the first. And maybe he's thinking same thing with the government entity as well. But mind you, government entity is not there to make a profit, right? It is there to help serve the people. I know there are a lot of folks with ideologies and philosophies around like, hey, government should be away from our life. Whatever government touches, it gets messed up. But think about it. If you don't have government, who's going to build a road? Who's going to protect you? Who is going to, all the slew of the factors, right? It's because government is there to help everyone. You could be rich, you could be poor, you could be men, you could be women, you could be black, you could be white, you could be brown. It shouldn't discriminate, or it's pretty much what Trump said, colorblind, right? And while doing that, they're ensuring everybody gets basic services. And then maybe like some of the aspect of the government can be privatized. But as soon as you bring that private entity, they are there to make a profit, right? They are going to cut the corners or do whatever to make profit, because behind the CEO, there's investors who wants return on their investment. Whereas in government, that's not a concept. So when people say, keep talking about we need to have our government run like a business, I feel like that's a stretch, where governments should not be run like a business. They are not there to run a profit. They are there to help people by any means. So if there is a disaster, they're helping people place in a home, get them food, get them resources, Anyways, so that kind of looked a little bit odd in a sense that he was putting his investors or his loyal folks in the front seat. All right, now let's talk about an executive order. The one executive order that I'm kind of, this whole movement to end whatever the trans rights were there, it's very interesting, very confusing to me. And then when I have talked like within my friends, within my other people that I talk to, they bring up this like trans people are everywhere, and the kids, it's gonna be one of those cool trends to be trans, this and that. To them, this is, maybe they interact with trans people all the time, but like, I met just one trans person, myself. So I met like one trans person. I'm 34-year-old, just one trans person, right? I feel like the argument against they're everywhere, this and that, I feel like it's very minuscule, right? There's like and And I'm on the side of where like trans athletes should not be playing sports with either men or women. They should play with their own, right? And one thing I did not understand is there's not that many trans athletes to begin with. And I was reading somewhere like there were more people who voted for to put the ban on trans something, whatever they passed, the legislation, than the trans athlete themselves playing in the sports, right? So it's kind of ridiculous, right? I feel like gun shooting at school is a bigger problem than you're trans. I mean, it happens probably like every week or so, somewhere in the United States, a school shooting is happening, but nobody's talking about that. Like, that's not an issue. Every time that comes up, especially on Republican sides, thoughts and prayers. But this non-existent issue of trans people doing some criminal act is apparently big enough to unite the Republican Party to end that. I never understood that, when a lot of kids are dying in school shooting, I mean, thoughts and prayers is all they talk about. But by God, somebody wants to convert to trans. Oh my goodness, it's the end of the world, right? And people think about this. Healthcare in the U.S. is so expensive. I mean, unless you're rich, you probably are thinking there's in the back in the mind. Even with a good insurance, like you're like, oh, I don't want to get sick, right? Maybe that's a copay, might be a huge amount, or maybe you don't even have insurance and you have to pay a lot of money out of pocket, right? And now you're thinking, oh, government is transitioning people, right? Or people are just transitioning themselves. It's such an affordable thing to do, right? Parents are just right and left. They're just transitioning kids because they can afford to and the kids want them. This is a ludicrous idea where the healthcare is so expensive. Maybe like out of 300 million of American people, maybe one or two have done it, and they are using that to using that as a propaganda to tell their people, like everybody, if you hear conservative news or Republican politicians, it feels like everybody around is transitioning, and I know rarely any people that are so. But I do know not a lot of people who are affected by gun violence, but that never gets addressed. So that's my point on that. All right, now let's talk about another thing, like what voters really wanted. I think with the Biden's presidency, although the stock market was doing good, but at least the poor and working class people were still getting affected that increase in prices of your regular groceries and eggs prices, maybe your gas, were still high. And I can relate to that too. I remember like before COVID, groceries were slightly cheaper, like maybe $60 I would spend on a week of groceries, or maybe $100. But now it's like I feel like every time I go to shop, it's more than $100, right? So and then this is the thing. I mean, everybody is feeling it, but all the executive order that I'm seeing from Trump, and in one of the interviews as well with Hannity, when Hannity was pressing him, well, he was not pressing him, he was asking him about, hey, what about the economics? I want to talk about economics. And then he said, I don't care. Like, that's not his agenda, apparently. Although people are... That's what they want, the groceries prices to be lower, That's why they sent him. And I didn't even see any like executive order on that, right? Like, although executive order will not reduce the prices, like the government does not have when you privatize everything, right? Government doesn't control the prices. They can't go to the eggs manufacturer and be like, oh no, start selling a dozen of eggs for $2 instead of whatever right now that is $8 or $9, right? They can't really do that. They don't have that leverage. So this whole idea of him focusing on some other things that voters did not send him to do does not make any sense, right? He's already like, he said one thing and is doing another thing. We should be kind of concerned to all of us, because maybe in next 4 years, if he doesn't address the issue, maybe the eggs you're buying for $8 is going to be $20, and that's going to be major issue when the wages are stagnant. Like the federal minimum wage is $7.25. It's ridiculous. Like with 725, 40 hours a week, you can't even pay rent, like not even groceries. And when the Senate were asking to his Treasury Secretary, he said no. Like he was not interested in raising minimum wage, or I don't know if he said that, but he was not interested in that question. Like he thinks 725 is all right, whereas his net worth is like $500 million. He doesn't care. He doesn't need to go buy groceries. Like to him, it's nothing, right? Anyway, so first week, nothing on that. When I guess. When a lot of voters were concerned about it in this election cycle. All right, now let's talk about this whole thing of him holding the aid, or there should be kind of like, hey, if you do this, we'll send you money for the disaster-prone area, especially right now with the California wildfires, like what's happening out there. I feel like that is very wrong. And the reason is, what if scenario? Probably Democrats are never gonna do this, or they're maybe spying to do this. I mean, Florida gets hurricane all the time, right? Like the southern states get a hurricane all the time, and in 2024, we saw a huge hurricane devastate North Carolina pretty badly, right? Biden didn't send that. He was there to help them out any means, any way he can. He didn't say to North Carolina governor or any other southern state governor, hey, if you legalize abortion, for example, if you legalize abortion, we're going to give you the money, otherwise we are not going to give you money. Or, hey, trans is a big issue, right? Hey, if you create a gender neutral bathroom, then we'll give you money or not, right? So they can do that too. And then disaster doesn't this whole idea of like California did this on their own is kind of ludicrous, right? Disaster doesn't look at state or anything. It's that's why it's called natural disaster. So all I'm trying to say is it can happen to other states too, right? And the fact is California puts in more money in federal budget than it takes money from that. So for a state that is doing that, it does not make any sense to put some sort of, you do this and then we'll give you aid or not, and I bet Trump doesn't like California because Republicans never win California. He didn't get those electoral votes. I bet if something happens in New York as a natural disaster, he'll do the same thing. But if it happens to some southern states, he's not going to do it because, hey, they voted for him, right? So this whole idea of like, oh, I'm going to help you out if you voted for me, if you're not, and you did not helping it, I'm not going to help you out if you did not vote for me is ludicrous. So it's hard to understand right now what his agenda is. With the disaster relief, he's also talking about like dismantling FEMA. And, this is one of those thinking. Sometimes I have those thinking too, not in that level where I'm dismantling everything, but sometimes you want to, you are doing some kind of project or task and it's going nowhere. Sometimes the easy way, I wouldn't say the easy way, but sometimes what I do is I scratch everything and start all over again, right? And this is perfectly makes sense if you're doing some small project, right? Let's say you are doing stairs, something messed up. You're like, fuck it, I'm going to scratch everything and build the stairs again, But something like a government agency, I think it's more challenging to fix it. He thinks it's difficult to fix it than to dismantle everything and start all over again. Right? I think he's applying that same ideas that you can take from a small project to a larger project. He's taking the same idea of like, hey, dismantling everything and start over again to a larger project, something like a FEMA, where there has been talks in recent days about like, hey, we're going to dismantle the whole FEMA. We're going to dismantle them and then build it up. I know, you know what, he hasn't said build it up again, so I don't know what's the plan there, but he wants to definitely dismantle it. And I feel like, now, that could be an easy way out. Let's say they dismantle everything. And I think that with a lot of Republican policies, that's what it is. Like, they wanted to repeal and replace Obamacare, but there was no replacement. Like, not even plans. Nobody saw anything. And I think in his debate also, like, he has a concept of plans. Like, what the fuck is a concept of plan, right? Like, even when you are, in my previous example, when you're building stairs in the house, you have a plan. Like, okay, this time you build it this way. When I'm going to scratch it out, I'm going to try a different way, right? Or this, whatever the way is. You're thinking about it. You're not like thinking, oh, I'm going to fuck it up and then think later, right? Especially with something which affects like millions and millions of people and not just one or two people, right? So this whole idea and notion of Republican Party or conservative government is to dismantle everything and not put something in a place or not think about it. I think it's a cop-out, right? They don't want to face the problem or issues, and they don't have patience for it. They don't have patience to fix one issue by one issue, right? Like, I bet, yeah, with any agency, any government agency, there are issues, there are problems. And same thing, in a private company, there's always an issue or a problem, right? That doesn't mean like the CEOs are just dismantling the whole company and be like, oh, we're going to start over again. Nobody's doing that. They're fixing issue by issue. And I think that's the vision his team, his advisors are, maybe some advisors do and maybe some other not, that they are lacking, right? Instead of dismantling something which is already working to some extent, let's try to fix one issue at a time. And this is why I feel like the American healthcare system, I know we're going kind of sideways from FEMA to American healthcare system. Like, it's going to take a while to see something like the healthcare system in other developed countries like Canada, UK, France, Germany, healthcare system like that. The reason is in US they are very against the idea of government or any one institution having the control of the healthcare system, right? Providing that services. So that is why we have thousands of, insurance, health insurance companies, hospitals. Nobody know what the hell is going on. So what Obama did with his Obamacare was like he removed the pre-existing. He did a few good things, right? And I feel like that was a good start. And I think Democrats always bring that up. Hey, we already have a good start. Let's keep adding one or more few things until we get to the point where nobody complains about healthcare. Like in the U.S., nobody complains about our roads and infrastructure, compared to other countries because they are good, right? You have a pothole, you can report it to your city, and they'll come and fix it, right? I know there was a lot of flooding. I want to say like 2017 here in Nebraska, Missouri area where Missouri River flooded, and some part of the I-29. Was washed away, Instead of dismantling the whole thing, what they did was they fix it, right? So that's what we do. We don't dismantle the whole thing, we fix it. So it might take time, but that's the whole concept and idea behind the Democrats, what they are trying to do. Hey, with what Obama did with the Affordable Health Care Act, is they remove the pre-existing conditions, right? Like, hey, if you already have this existing condition, you're not covered. Like, what a nonsense, right? And then he also made where the kids could be on their parents' plan until they turn 25 or 26, right? A few good things. And now there are a lot of folks, like, they don't have to worry about pre-existing conditions or anything like that. Now let's build on to that, right? Let's try to add more people to the Affordable Care Act. And then that's how you kind of build a good, robust healthcare system without dismantling everything. And I feel like this could be done with your FEMA or whatever agency that Trump does not like. Trump doesn't like, Trump feels like, it needs to be privatized because private companies can do a better job. Yes, some private companies can do a better job, right? But not a lot of companies in the U.S. go bankrupt every month, every day, every year. There is something called survivorship bias, where you only know about things that survive, right? So all the companies right now you read on the news are the companies that survived. I bet there are thousands of other companies that you don't even know their name and they didn't survive. They didn't make it after a year. They didn't make it after a month. They had to shut down after another year. So this whole idea of like, private companies is gonna come and do good, is nonsense. Because let's say if the private company succeeds, then they can do good. But if it doesn't, then it's gonna do even more bad. How about the government is already involved in that issue? They already have knowledge about that issue. Why not fix one thing at a time? And I feel like this is the whole idea that the conservatives are not thinking about it. They want everything to be quick, which is not the case. Let's talk about. There's so many things in this news cycle that's happening. Like every day is like you hear something about it, and it's hard to follow through. Let's talk about this whole immigration crackdowns. Now, one thing people get really argumentative. Start fighting with each other in this whole concept of immigration. It's a touchy subject, right? And especially from the right, they are always like, immigrants are taking your job, immigrants are killing your kids, killing other people. for example, Lincoln Riley. I don't know the whole story, but it looks like illegal immigrants shot her or killed her, and now we have the act on that. However, going to my previous example, gun shooting happens all the time in America. There's nothing on that. I bet the crime from illegal immigrants are far less than, let's say, let's say citizens or the lawful permanent residents or people who are from legal here. But we don't have any actor on that. And this is one of those games that administrators are playing where they are blaming a group of individuals to get themselves elected in the office, right? So yeah, I mean, the whole idea of, now they say illegal, this would end this would not have any illegal, this would stop anyways the illegal immigrants are coming, correct? And then this would help out legal immigrants, because the thing is, with all those people in here, the unemployment rate is already low. Like, people, if they want to find a job in the US, they can find a job in the US. Now, that might not be the job with the same skill set they have or anything, but nobody's gonna, if they want to work, there's a work. And there's a work with all those illegal immigrants or immigrants with not lawful status in the country. So they're surviving somehow too, right? Maybe under the table, probably most likely under the table, but they are there. Now, and this is a country of immigrants. There will always be people coming in either legally or illegally. Of course, they need to make the legal pathway simpler or easier for people who are qualified to come. But they're not even doing that, right? That is why we have a lot of folks coming in illegal. They're migrating through the border because they don't have resources or means to come here legally, right? I bet a lot of folks like would want to come to US, work, and just leave. Come here, work for like seasonal workers, right? Seasonal farmers or whatever industry, seasonal in tourist areas where they need people for a season, and once they come in, they want to go home, right? Like, but there is a very I think S2B is the program, but the number of individuals that can come in a year is very low, right? Another thing is all these folks who are coming from all this country have been in some way ravished by U.S. policies. So like all the South Americans, they come here because they have a cartel issue in their home country. And you know, how does that come about? Because guns in the US, like in Mexico, it's illegal. You cannot buy a gun. You cannot go to a store and buy a gun. Where does all the guns in the Mexico come from? United States. It gets smuggled from here to there. So what's happening in Mexico is direct result of what's happening in the United States. Other U.S. foreign policies going into these countries and dismantling the government or dismantling one regime for another regime is creating chaos and instability where people want to flee their home country to come here and work and live. I mean, at the end of the day, that's all they want to do. And if they have option of doing that in their home country, like, why would they want to come? Like, and that's true for everything. Like, I came from Nepal to study to United States, right? If the universities in Nepal were awesome and the best in the world, do you think I would come to United States to study here? No, I would study in my home country where my friends and family are there. It's not. That's why I came here. It's the same thing with the folks in there. If they had good paying jobs or jobs in general in their home country, and they were not afraid of life, even for the political persecution or from the cartel, then why would the hell they would come to take all those miles of walking through South America, through Mexico, and then come to United States, like, and then come here illegally to get exploited by businesses and these business owners, you know? Think about it. Put yourself in their shoe and see what they're doing and why they're doing, and maybe it'll make sense to you. And another thing, while they are prosecuting all these people who are here illegally and deporting them, I don't hear a word about all the businesses they are hiring. All these businesses they're hiring, they're paying them. I mean, they don't have a social security number, or they have fake social security number, right? So they're paying them pretty much under the table. So the company is saving money in payroll taxes, and they don't have to give them any benefits. And guess what? They can give $7.25 an hour, or they can give $1 an hour, or $2 an hour, or whatever the hell they want, right? So it's adding to the company's bottom line. And we're not prosecuting those companies, because guess what? In America, yeah, it's okay if you are a big business to do any kind of illegal activity, but if you're an individual, you cannot do, right? I feel like if they're deporting the illegal immigration, they should be also punishing those companies, larger or small companies, for hiring them. Like, it's a two-way street, guys. People come here because they get a job. They know they can get a job. If they knew like nobody was gonna get a job, nobody would fucking come here. And nothing is done on that end, right? And with all these like immigrants, legal or illegal, I mean, let's say we deport all, like, who's gonna do the construction workers? Who's gonna pick vegetables at the field? Who's going to do the jobs inside the restaurant? Like, if you go to any restaurant, probably the dishwasher is some immigrant. Beside the main chef, pretty much all of the chef or the cooks are your immigrants. Cleaning crew in offices, in restaurants, in houses, most of the time they are immigrants. I mean, immigrants are everywhere. Like, if you live in a rural area, you probably don't have to interact with one. And maybe that's why you hate them. That's why you feel like when you go to a city, like, oh, you see all these people who don't look like you. And then you're like, oh, they're taking your jobs, taking everything. But guess what? Nobody's taking anything. They're working just like you. And maybe harder than you, and they're taking jobs that you wouldn't want to do. So either they have to come away, like, okay, we're going to give them a temporary visa where they come like every 2 years work, or they can work here temporarily, like how a lot of Middle Eastern countries do, you know? Like, when I went to Qatar, if you go to airport, like, it's all South Asian people running the airport, right? Pretty much in their country, like, it's all immigrants running the country. They get temporary visa, they can work there, they can live there, but they're never a citizen, and people don't care, because all they want to do is just work there and send money back home or have a good living. That's all they care about. And maybe that's the solution. They need to go here, because they know these jobs, nobody who's citizen here, who's resident is going to do the job. So maybe let's come up with a temporary visa where people can come here legally and they can work here as long as they want. And then once they're happy, or once they get older, they go back, you know. But there has to be some sort of solution. Just every 4 years, like, one administration does not really stop, or does not have policies to stop migrants, where other administration comes in blazing hot and tries to stop them or create policies to stop them. Like, it's not gonna work. Like, it's gonna come back. It's this never-ending cycle unless they find a good solution, a long-lasting solution. And for that, they need to think both sides of the aisle. They need to talk to each other and get on with it to find like some permanent way to get people here legally, so they don't have to come through crawling through the border. And have some program, go look at Middle East countries and what do they do, and probably try to do something here. All right, guys, that's about it. That's good 40 minutes. I plan to do this every week, and we'll just do this for only audio for a while. But eventually, once I set up my studio, we'll probably do a video too. And I bet lots of you are listening this in audio only version anyway, so probably doesn't really matter. But if it does, let me know. Thank you, everyone. Have a good day. Bye.